Last week I bought quite a lot of avocados. I got them partly because I love them, partly because they were on offer in the shop, and partly because Trin expressed an interest in trying them, and seeing as there is not a single fruit that she will eat, I thought it was worth a go. On the day that she had geared herself up to her first experience of smashed avocado on toast, which was what she'd heard about, I got one out of the fridge that I thought looked particularly good. If you wanted to see a perfect avocado, this would be it. The skin was just the right shade of dark greeny purple, and it felt like it was at the optimum stage of ripeness, able to give a little when you squeezed it, but not too squelchy. When I cut it open, it was clear that this was not going to live up to my expectations though. It was more black than green on the inside, and although I kept trimming away at it, there wasn't really any part of it that was edible at all. I was very disappointed, and especially so because I didn't want Trin to see the manky looking flesh and be put off before she'd even tasted an avocado. Fortunately, the next one was fine. Trin was able to do what she wanted with it, and she decided that she did quite like it, but only if I could share it with her. She's not yet ready to eat a whole one on her own. I've been thinking a lot about expectations over the last couple of weeks. We probably all have to a certain extent. There's been a lot in the news about expectations, particularly involving the A-level, GCSE and BTEC results that have been coming out within the last fortnight. Whether or not you've got friends, children or grandchildren who were expecting results this time around, it would have been hard not to be moved to compassion and anger about the latest fiasco. To hear that students were potentially going to be downgraded despite any prior achievement made no sense to anyone, and my heart went out to all those who were going to see their hopes and expectations disappointed. It was such a relief at the start of last week to hear that teachers' assessments would prevail. There will still be some, both students and parents, whose expectations were exceeded, some who got exactly what they hoped for, and some whose expectations have been disappointed. It's not always easy to manage our expectations or to cope when what we get in reality in any situation doesn't match the idea we have in our heads. We probably do need some personal expectations of ourselves in order to function in life. When I was at school and university, if I didn't have expectations of the grades I could achieve, I might not have been driven to put as much effort into getting them. But I'm also aware of how crippling expectations can be, especially when they're projected onto us by others, or when we think we know what other people are thinking about us or expecting of us. These things can become really big in our minds and utterly detrimental to our mental well-being. I have a friend who has just finished her job in order to move to college in Birmingham to train for ministry in the Methodist Church. On her last day of work, she put a post on Facebook asking if anyone else ever feels that they haven't done enough. There were so many comments in response, all of which showed that there are a lot of people out there who struggle with this a lot of the time. My response was in the same vein as all the others. I simply wrote, "Every day," in answer to the question. I feel that I'm often juggling with a number of different balls. There are the expectations that go along with my job. Everyone has an idea of what they want me to be doing or what they think I should be doing, and it's not unusual to be told about this. There are family expectations too. Quite rightly, I get a lot of flack from Trin if I so much as look at the computer when I'm supposed to be having a day off. And also if I have too many evening meetings scheduled in 1 week. My family are not unreasonable, I don't think, in expecting that I should have a couple of evenings that we can be together. Then there are the expectations that live in my head, the things that I think other people might be thinking about me, the weekly feeling of dread as I ask myself, have I done enough this week? Knowing that when I look at my timesheet, the hours will say yes, but something inside me will still be shouting no, and it's so much easier to focus on things left undone rather than work accomplished. When the weight of expectation becomes too much for me, even if it's all my own projection or imagination, I want to just shut myself away. I want to build a big protective barrier around myself to keep everybody out. But even when this is at its worst, I know that I'm not on my own. I somehow become aware that Jesus is creeping in beside me, drawing near to me in my isolation and not letting that barrier close down completely. I seem to hear the quiet whisper of the Spirit, assuring me that I am loved without condition, that God's love for me is not dependent on how I have measured up to my own or anyone else's expectations, that I am okay, that I am enough for God just as I am, and God is enough for me. There are times when we all struggle under the burden of expectation, and it's not easy to choose not to pick it up. And when we have picked it up, it's not easy to let it go. There's a story of a person who was asked by God to carry 3 stones in a wheelbarrow up to the top of a hill. As she went along, she met a lot of different people. Some saw that she got a wheelbarrow and asked her to carry some things for them. And some people just dumped their stuff in her wheelbarrow anyway without even asking. In the end, the load was too heavy and she sat down and couldn't go any further. She told God, "This is too much, I'm giving up." God said, "Why is your wheelbarrow full? I only asked you to carry those 3 stones." One of my favourite bits of the Bible is at the end of John's Gospel after Jesus' resurrection. Jesus and Peter have just had their conversation on the seashore, and Jesus has just told Peter to keep on following him. Peter looks around and sees one of the other disciples. Peter says to Jesus, "Well, what about him?" Jesus replies, "Never mind about him. I want you to follow me." It's easy to become preoccupied with what others are doing or with what we think others are thinking about us. It's easy to spend a lot of time trying to live up to the image others have of us or the image we think others have of us, and it's utterly exhausting. And in those moments, it's easy to take our eyes off Jesus and stop following him because we're so preoccupied with everybody else. The voice of Jesus cuts through all that, simply saying, "Never mind them, you follow me. And come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. My burden is easy and my yoke is light." When I think about my own children, I don't want them to feel overwhelmed by my expectations. I want them each to find their way through life and be happy. I don't want them to worry about what I'm thinking. I don't want them to ever fear that they might be letting me down. I want them to know that I love them and care for them no matter what. But perhaps I'm not so careful sometimes with the kind of expectations I put on others. Perhaps I allow myself to feel let down. And perhaps I allow others to know that I'm disappointed with them sometimes. I know I need to take Jesus' words to heart more and more, knowing that just as he is saying to me, "Never mind the others, you follow me," he is saying that to everyone else too. And if our eyes are on Jesus and we're walking in his way, those burdens of expectation won't be able to find a grip or take hold of us. And we will know that we are loved no matter what. Sometimes life throws an avocado at you that seems so full of promise on the outside, but lets you down on the inside. And sometimes the avocado is just as you think it should be. But good or bad, whatever I'm dealing with, there's only one expectation that I want to live up to: the call of Jesus to follow him, and the hope and expectation he has of me, that I can be one, that I will be one who is willing and able to let go of everything, fix my eyes on him, and embrace the life he offers, secure in his unconditional love.